Hello and welcome to this week's episode of War Eagle Weekly. War Eagle to you, Josh. How are you doing today?
Where you go, Cameron? I'm doing okay, man. Just got a little bit of a different setup this week. I'm out of town. Gotta make do, but I'm ready to talk about some Auburn sports, man.
Yeah, it's kind of like you and Charlie Five are on the same internet connection. There's a little bit of delay between what I'm saying and what you're hearing, and vice versa.
Yes. Seems to be a pretty big delay.
Yeah, it seems like it's gotten a lot bigger since we tested it out, but we'll be able to make it work. It'll be okay, guys. Josh, feel free to interrupt me because I can stop talking a lot quicker than you can hear me, obviously. But hey, guys, we're going to make this work. We got a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to just dive right in. We're going to talk about the transfer portal. We got a lot of stuff going on. We had one player jump in the portal, and that was Coy Moore. The portal is now closed, so we shouldn't lose any more players, and that includes grad transfers. The new rule with the NCAA is the transfer portal. Grad transfers have to transfer within the open periods as well. They can't just throw their name in the hat at any point moving
Yeah.
forward, which is really good. But Coy Moore, Josh, what are you thinking as far as what are we losing here? I mean, 3 receptions, 24 yards, 0 touchdowns last year. Not really a big loss, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I don't think it's that big of a loss. It always sucks when you got a player that's on your team that leaves to the portal. It kind of
Mm-hmm.
sucked. I don't think it's anything to do with the coaches or anything. I think it has to do with him seeing all the talent that
Yeah.
Auburn is bringing in from the portal and from high school ranks, and he's kind of seeing the writing on the walls there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Because he was kind of a leader in the wide receiver room during the spring. A lot of the young wide receivers were talking him up, and so I just think he's just trying to get his shot. And you can't blame a guy for trying to do that. And so, best of
Exactly.
luck to Coy Moore. He hasn't taken any shots at coaches on the way out the door. So I can't be mad at him like I am with Aiden Holloway. But I know completely different sport. But we'll get to that later because both of us, I think, still have something to say about it. Incoming. Didn't have anybody commit to us, but Auburn is looking at a couple of players. The first one is Javion Cole. He's a cornerback out of San Jose State. He came originally from Cal Poly. Now, this guy, he just screams like somebody that is going to succeed at every level of football. He just keeps proving himself. Looks like a really good player. 876 total snaps last year, 10 pass breakups, 3 interceptions, 3 tackles for a loss, 1 sack. He's not the biggest in the world, 5'10", 175 pounds, but the guy, he looks good. Josh, thoughts on this guy? Did you have notes on him?
I don't have notes on him. I know of him. All I can say is when it comes to the secondary, you can't have too much depth, and I think you and I both agree
No.
on that subject. I mean, the dude has quality snaps. He has quality college experience. So I feel like adding a player of that caliber will be completely fine, and it's going to work out for both parties involved.
Yeah, he really looked like somebody that just, again, he just jumps off the stat page. He plays everything. I mean, he was playing special teams, kick return, punt return. He was out there blocking stuff. Just the kind of player you really want, especially for depth, and can compete for a job next year. He does have
Exactly.
offers from Michigan State, Cincinnati, Miami of Ohio, Houston, Tennessee, and Texas. So we're not the only offer out there for him. But again, like you were saying, can't have too much depth. And with us losing Colton Hood to the Buffalo, Colorado Buffalo, Deion Sanders, and everything, it can't hurt to add somebody else in there to be a depth piece.
You know,
Um,
Colton Hood, I feel, is the
Josh,
one
did
that
you
hurt the
did you
most.
Yeah, that one kind of sucked, but I mean, I went over it last week. I know you were sick and weren't able to join in last week,
Yeah.
but Colton Hood, he really didn't have much production. He had a lot of good things being said about him and a lot of potential, but really we didn't lose a lot of production from that standpoint. I think we're getting a lot more production if we end up getting Cole than we lost in Colton Hood, if you ask me.
Yeah, that could be the case. I mean, Colton Hood's definitely a lot younger than Cole, but I mean, I think Cole's not Cole. I
Mm,
think
that's
Hood's
true.
ceiling is higher. I think Hood's floor is higher because I think Cole may be at his peak
Oh,
athleticism and potential, especially coming in as a portal guy. So I feel like keeping Cole would have been not keeping Cole, keeping Hood would have been a bigger win than getting Cole committed through the portal.
I gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, I mean that's fair. Um, outside of that, we're looking at a linebacker, Khalil Jacobs out of South Alabama. This looks like a difficult situation in order to get him. Had a really good visit. Apparently, they gave him a lot of information. The coaching staff. He wasn't really thinking that they would have a plan like they did for him, but it sounds like the visit went really well. But I mean, you hear that stuff all the time on exit interviews. But I really feel like it's Missouri or Alabama, to be perfectly honest, especially since his head coach from South Alabama is now Alabama's defensive coordinator. Um, what are your opinions on that, Josh?
I really don't think he's going to go to Missouri or Alabama. I think he's a strong Auburn lean. Um, his position coach at South
Wow.
Alabama
Okay.
kind of ditched him to go to Alabama, and who knows? He could feel a little jaded from that. Who knows? But I mean, he's definitely not going to get starter minutes at Alabama. He very well could get starter minutes at Auburn. He could share
No, that's
snaps at
true.
Auburn, and I mean, I feel like his opportunity would be a lot higher at an Auburn or Missouri. So if anything, it's an Auburn Missouri battle. Um, I mean, even on three kind of agrees with me. They have Auburn at a
That's fair.
91.5% chance of landing him, and Alabama only at a 2.8. So I mean, in my opinion,
Wow.
it's Auburn or Missouri with a strong favor to Auburn.
Okay, well that's awesome, man. I mean, I wouldn't complain, and the coaching staff obviously again has a plan for him. So hopefully that works out. Well, let's go ahead and move right on into our next topic. Um, as Auburn fans, we really don't like talking about this because it kind of sucks. But the SEC payout rankings came out, AL.com, which we all know who they favor. They're an Alabama lean to begin with. So anytime they get a chance to, take a dig at Auburn, they're going to do it. But again, some alarming information in this report. It's stuff that we already knew, but it's still alarming. Auburn is paying out $19.9 million to ex coaches. Now, I say ex coaches because it's not just the head coach, but it is their coaching staff if they
Yeah,
haven't paid them that money. And it's not just Brian Harson, it's also Gus Malzahn, who I hate that we're still paying for this guy, Josh. Now, moving on, we're going to talk about the SEC payout rankings. AL.com released a article talking about it. It's all common knowledge, and let's be honest, AL.com is always going to lean one way in this state, and that's Alabama lean. So anytime they get a chance to take a dig at Auburn, they're going to. But this one's kind of well deserved. It kind of just sucks that we're paying out so much more money than every other team. Uh, Auburn is paying out $19.9 million to not only Brian Harson but Gus Malzahn as well. Josh, kind of hate that we're still paying this guy. What do you think?
I mean it sucks. We didn't get like Auburn did not get what they paid for from Gus Malzahn. Auburn fans did not get what they wanted or expected from Gus Malzahn his last year. It's just one of those tough pills to swallow, and it just all around sucks
Mm-hmm.
completely that we're still having to pay him plus Brian Harson and all of their coordinators that they brought with them. It's just it sucks for right now, but Auburn's moved on to better and greener pastures.
Yep, and not just that, but the next closest is a team that wasn't even in the SEC last year in Texas, paying out only 5.4 million. That's a huge gap. And LSU coming in third with 5 million. Tennessee, South Carolina didn't pay anything, but of course we are having to pay a lot. Now the good news
A
is
lot.
next year Auburn shouldn't be the top paying out team because Jimbo Fisher got the boot there at Texas A&M, and they are paying him a whopping $72 million. I don't know
Yeah, never. No one's
how
ever
many
going to beat
years they
that.
have to space that out at. It really won't ever
So
happen. So
much.
it's just absolutely positively hilarious. I'm super stoked for them to take that top spot. We don't want to spend too much time on
Oh,
this just
absolutely. It's
because
just
it's widely available, but yeah, I just cannot stand the fact that this is it's just stupid. But hey, we're in a better coaching situation now. Hopefully, long term. And Hugh Freeze is by far better than Brian Harson in the potato famine. Um,
yes.
Daryl Dappage this morning on Locked On Auburn had a fantastic joke. And I don't know if you've gotten a chance to hear it because you've been out of town, but he was saying that the people in Ireland looking up the potato famine are feeling pity for us because this one was so much worse than theirs. So
Yes.
kudos to him on that one. So, moving on, we're just going to really skip through this really quickly. It's probably going to be a little bit of a shorter episode just because of our technical difficulties this week. But we're going to jump into recruiting. So, Josh, how is the lack of a 2025 QB commit impacting Auburn's recruiting efforts? Because if most fans are like me, I'm starting to get a little worried about this.
I don't think it's a problem at all, considering the fact we got one of the top quarterbacks in the
Oh.
2024 cycle, and we have also Hank Brown, who showed a lot of promise last year in the bowl game. But I mean, doesn't mean we're not in the running for some players. Most notably, Julian Lewis, who's currently, you know, committed, if you want to say committed, to USC, because this guy just keeps taking trip after trip after trip on his own dime to go to Auburn, and he's flirting with Auburn a lot. And so, I mean, just because we don't have any current commits in the 25 cycle doesn't mean that we're not in the running for any of the players in the 25 cycle. So I'm not concerned whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. That was actually going to be my point. Is we got Juju Lewis, who we appear to be in the top two running. George just kind of bowed out and said, "Hey, we're tired of waiting on you." Um,
Yep.
Obviously, we'd want him to commit sooner rather than later. But I mean, are in the running for a lot of athletes, a lot of players, and so it doesn't seem to be hurting other positions, but it could be helping so much more. Like you talked about last year, we got Walker White, who just had a huge impact on our recruiting class and started
Massive.
recruiting for Auburn. And so it'd be nice if we were able to get that, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like you said, Walker White provided a lot of recruiting momentum whenever he committed to Auburn, and he got a lot of guys actually looking at Auburn. Just imagine what that will do for Auburn recruiting if a guy like Julian Lewis commits to Auburn. It's just gonna make a lot more guys that aren't even looking at Auburn for the most part actually take a harder look at Auburn and be like, okay, they got a guy like Julian Lewis who can sling the friggin' rock. Like maybe I should look more
Yeah.
into them and consider committing to them over someone else who may have some more quarterback doubts than Auburn does. I mean, adding a guy like Julian Lewis or even a highly talented recruited quarterback is just going to do more wonders than harm when it comes to recruiting. So it's just a waiting game and patience
Yeah,
game right
because we're
now.
in the running. we're in the running for Caleb Cunningham, who's the number 17 player in the country, number 3 at the wide receiver position. And so, if he knew that Juju was possibly going to be his quarterback, I know he thinks Walker White is, but these kids in the same recruiting class, they're going to have a closer connection than the previous year. So, yeah, he might like Walker White, but Juju is obviously, the higher, the more higher touted quarterback.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, again, it'd just be really nice to have that.
Oh, absolutely. It would. It's
So
everything is just going to get better under Hugh Freeze when it comes to recruiting. There's no doubt about it.
it really should. It really should. So we do have a lot of players that are going to be visiting here soon. We got Broderick Scholl, the number 10 tackle out of Oklahoma. He's visiting on the 31st of this month, and appear to be in the lead to get him. And so I would imagine that would help Juju in the sense that he wouldn't feel too bad about having, somebody so good at the tackle position blocking for
For
him.
sure.
We got Keoti Armstrong, the number 4 tight end in the class. And then Kalen Edwards, the number 22 defensive lineman in the class, all visiting on the 31st. We got Josh Petty. He's an interior offensive line. He is the number 2 interior offensive lineman in the country, number 21 on the national rankings. He's planned to visit on the 4th. So again, like you were stating, just because we don't have that 5-star quarterback or that quarterback committed to us in this class does not mean that we're not in the running for all these other players, because we have a lot of players and a lot of the top players that are going to be committing to Auburn in this class that haven't yet committed. So I think we're in a good position. I agree. I think it's hurting us. I think it's hurting us that we don't have a quarterback, but again, I think we're in a really good position.
Well, how do you think it's hurting us? I don't think it's hurting us whatsoever. I mean, it's super early in the 25 recruiting cycle. These kids pop left and right as the season goes on, and as it gets closer to National Signing Day. I don't see it hurting at all, to be honest with you. It just there's a lot of unknowns for a lot of teams, and I mean, you can't expect a player to make their final decision in the off season.
Well, I can see that, but QBs are. Go look at the top QBs in the country. Go look at the other ones that we're recruiting. They are hard commits. They are hard commits. Remember how early in the recruiting cycle we got Walker White to commit to us. It just changes the whole perplexion. It changes the whole outcome of the recruiting class. And once you get a quarterback on board, that's just how it is. So it is hurting us in that sense.
I mean, I guess I can see what you're saying. It would help us more if we had a QB commit rather than it actually hurting us right now. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. Then we're on the
So,
same page.
but again, we're in the running. So, moving right along, now that the portal is closed as far as players that can enter the portal, and we're done with spring practices, the spring game, and everything, we are going to take this opportunity to tell you all who our hopeful starters are going to be for the Auburn Tigers heading into the season. We're going to do this week, we're going to talk about our offensive starters, and then next week we're going to talk about our defensive starters. We're also going to go with, the 2 or 3 person depth on there with
Yeah.
some of the skill positions. We're not going to dive too deep in there, but we are going to talk about, some of the players. Josh and I have some differing opinions on a couple of things, but mostly I was surprised to see that we were kind of in the same area and same general, we had the same mindset on our depth chart. What do you think, Josh?
For the most part, especially at offensive line, we kind of agreed.
Yeah. So, Josh, go ahead and start us off with the quarterback position, and tell us who we all agree that these are going to be our starters and this is going to be the depth chart on this position.
So you want me to start with the depth chart then?
The quarterbacks. The
Okay.
quarterbacks. Yeah, let's start with the quarterbacks.
Okay, so I know you said this is a hopeful projection. I mean, there's a couple of hopefuls in here for
Hmm.
me, but I'm going off of what I feel would make the most sense as it sits right now. At quarterback one, obviously, I'm going to have Peyton Thorne, with Hank Brown actually being the
Yep.
solidified number
Yep.
two, with Holden Garriner or Walker White as the third string.
Yeah, and we both agreed on this. Although one of us is clearly a bigger Peyton Thorne fan than the other.
I'm
You
not a
being that
fan.
person that absolutely positively loves Peyton Thorne. He is one of your favorite players of all time in Auburn uniform. You
Cameron, do
you
you know how
said
to
that to
fight?
me. There was no witnesses. There was no witnesses, but you definitely said that to me.
Do you know how to fight? Because we're about to throw hands.
Yeah, but there's going to be a little bit of a delay in your swing, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to see it coming.
Ultra Instinct.
So, yeah, for your DBS fans out there. Moving right along, we're going to jump into the running back position. I don't think anybody was surprised about the quarterback thing. I think every Auburn
No.
fan has kind of came to the realization that Peyton Thorne is going to be our starter, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But moving right along, I kind of disagreed with what you had here as far as your order, but for the most part, I'm kind of okay with it. The only thing I disagree with is we have Jarquez Hunter or Damari Alston as our starter. I'm okay with the or Damari Alston as the starter, the running back one, just because he did start for us last year in absence of Jarquez Hunter. So if Jarquez for whatever reason is not able to start, I don't think anybody would have a problem with Damari Alston
Yeah.
taking over. Damari Alston is, he's definitely 1A, or I'm sorry, a 1B, not 1A. Jarquez Hunter is 1A. And then you have Jeremiah Cobb as the number, essentially two on this list, and Brian Batty as number three, which really is no surprise. I think that's exactly the order that everyone out there would expect, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, Damari Alston did a really good job in his time in playing in Jarquez's absence. So, I mean, it's going to be
Yeah,
really hard to justify keeping him off of the field, which is why I put the or, because, I mean, I feel like we're going to definitely see plays where they're
that's
both on the
fair.
field at the same time, but I can also definitely see them splitting snaps throughout the game.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair, and it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this three-headed monster that we have at running back because they can't keep Jeremiah Cobb off of the
No,
field.
not without losing him next year, that's for sure.
Yep, exactly. So here is where we kind of differ a lot heading into our wide receiver list. Josh, go ahead and start us off with your depth chart for the wide receiver one position.
So, wide receiver one, I have Kevondre Lambert Smith as the starter, Cam Coleman being the second wide receiver one option, and then Camden Brown being the third wide receiver one option. The reason why I have KLS as wide receiver one, um, I know he left Penn State because he wanted to be the number one guy. He wanted to be a number one receiver. We all
Mm-hmm.
know that he can catch the ball, he can run routes, he can do what he needs to do at the wide receiver position. Um, so I feel like it's going to be very hard to keep a player of his caliber off the starting rotation, and especially in that wide receiver one spot, especially if he comes in and actually shows that he belongs in that wide receiver one spot, which is why I have Cam Coleman as the second option at wide receiver one. But I feel like I said, I don't. Not all of these are hopefuls for me. I listed them what I feel is going to make the most sense to start the season off, and as things stand right now.
Yeah, and I disagree completely. I think we are totally on opposite pages here. I think even as it stands now, Cam Coleman is clearly the best wide receiver we have on the team, unless something drastic happens. So he is my wide receiver one, Cam Coleman, and then I go with Camden Brown is going to be backing him up, and with Robert Lewis as the third, and then Perry Thompson as the fourth. I'm going to jump right into wide receiver two, which obviously no one's going to be surprised. Opposite side of the field for us is going to be KLS, and then Camden Brown again backing him up. So the number two on both the number one and the number two wide receivers. Robert Lewis again, and then Perry Thompson to round us out. Now Perry Thompson, he very well could move up the chart there. I told people last week he was a 5-star at one point, but he started trying to do a little too much for his team, I think, and kind of showed some weaknesses in that. But I think Perry Thompson is ready to play in the SEC, and before the end of the season, he could very well be the number two wide receiver, and I don't think anybody, even you, Josh, would be surprised about that.
Oh, I definitely
What's your
wouldn't.
number two depth chart?
So I definitely wouldn't be
Oh, go
surprised
ahead,
with
continue.
Perry Thompson coming in and doing what we all know he can do. But as far as my wide receiver two depth chart, I have actually Camden Brown being the starter wide receiver two, with Bryce Kane being the
So
backup
you
and
don't
Perry
have Cam
Thompson.
Coleman starting
I
to
do not
start the
have
season
Cam
off.
Coleman starting to start the season off
See,
correct, and I explained why I did, and I'm going to explain why I have Camden Brown as the
go
starter
ahead.
with Bryce Kane backing him up. Now, we all saw Camden Brown last year and the year before, so we all know what he can do. We all know what he can't do. And then we all saw what he did in the spring game, which is he essentially caught almost every ball thrown to him. So we know he has the hands to do it. We know he can run a route. So I feel though that Camden Brown's progress through the spring and through these camps, I feel that has earned him, as it stands right now, a starting spot. The reason I have Bryce Kane backing him up is because he's also gone through spring ball. He's also learned the offense, and we all know that he can also run routes and create separation. And Perry Thompson, like you said, he could very well move up the depth chart when he gets here and plays in the summer camps and practices with the team. But because of those two players having that experience and Bryce Kane having that spring experience with the team, that's why I have Perry Thompson as the third option at wide receiver two, and Camden Brown's progress as wide receiver two, number one.
See, and I get your explanation, but I could not disagree more. To say that Cam Coleman is not going to start game one at one of the two starting positions at wide receiver is absolutely asinine, ass 11, to borrow a phrase from Stephen A. Smith. I
Stupid.
it's just it doesn't make any sense, man. I You know how many people would be so upset if Cam Coleman is not starting the first play of offense? Fans would lose their mind. There might actually be boos coming from the stands if Cam Coleman is not on the field the first snap, unless he gets
You're acting
injured
like I'm
from now
saying he's
until the
not going
start
to
of the
get
season.
snaps. You're acting like I'm saying he's going to be on the sideline the entire game.
No,
I mean, he very well could come out game one
no.
with a special package for him to be the starting wide receiver. Who knows? I don't know if a freshman will be able to come in and beat out a guy like Kavondre Lambert Smith to be wide receiver one. I don't know that can happen.
But you're saying that that Camden Brown is going to be starting ahead of him as well.
Yeah,
I
like I
just don't
said,
see it. That's
you're
what I
you're
don't
again
see.
you're going off hopefuls. I'm going off what would make most sense as it stands right now.
And I don't think there's another Auburn fan out there that would agree with you, Josh. Hot take,
Okay,
man.
Cameron, it's okay
Hot
to be
take.
wrong, Cameron.
Kudos
It's
to
okay
you.
to be wrong. Just
Oh,
admit it.
no. Yeah, is that what you're telling yourself?
No,
You're
I'm
not
telling
telling me
you.
that because I'm
I
not
am telling
wrong.
you that.
Okay, that's just ridiculous. No. Um I just don't get it. It's just so freaking hilarious. Uh, he's going to be the one of the outside receivers at the first play. He is, and I
And
would
if
wager whatever you want to put down that
if
he
I'm
would be,
wrong,
unless he
I'm
is
wrong.
injury excluding injury. So either way, hey, this is just for fun. We're having fun doing this. I'm enjoying, it, even though we're disagreeing on our selections. I'm enjoying this. I'm gonna start us off with wide receiver three. So our slot receiver. I got Robert Lewis, Caleb Burton, Sam Jackson, and Bryce Kane. Um, Bryce Kane is still very raw, and heard nothing but good things about Robert Lewis. And I obviously don't want Caleb Burton to get lost in the shuffle because, there towards the end of the season, he started really coming on.
Yes, yeah, and we're kind of on the same boat on that one. I have Robert Lewis or Caleb
Yeah.
Burton as a starter, um,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm okay with it being a 1A, 1B type situation. The list I sent you, I did switch up a little bit. I then have Sam Jackson or Bryce Kane being that's
Okay.
in the second string spot on that, and then just for shits and giggles, I put Dylan Gentry as the last option because I think it'd be fun to see him on the field early. I think it'd be a lot of fun to see him.
Hey, yeah, no, I'd be okay with him being on the field. It'd be who was that player who he was that white dude that played with Jarrett Stidham in 2017. He even went into the NFL and made a practice squad. Why can't I remember
Holy
his name?
smokes,
Little
what was
tiny
his name?
guy. What was that?
It is. I know who you're talking about. It's Will Hastings.
Will Hastings. Yeah,
Yeah.
Devin Gentry feels like Will Hastings if there ever was one. He'll
It
come in, make a
definitely he
couple of
gives you
great
also
plays,
vibes.
and so moving on to I know on your list you had linemen next, but let's talk about our tight ends. Again, we differed on this one here. Go ahead and start us off, Josh.
I don't know how you could differ on this one. I mean, you got Rivaldo Fairweather as the obvious starter. Then you have Rico
Yeah.
Walker, and then Luke Dill or
Nope.
Mike O'Reilly or Brandon Frazier. That's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah. No, see, and we both agree with Rivaldo Fairweather. It's not even close. He's our number one, so that's not an issue. But Luke Deal, Mike O'Reilly Ducker as our number three, then Rico Walker and Brandon Frazier. Rico
You're
Walker,
crazy.
I think he is going to be the Rivaldo Fairweather replacement next year. But he has too many, seniors ahead of him or upperclassmen ahead of him. I just don't see him seeing the field that much. I think these other
Cameron,
two
the best
guys,
kid on the
Luke
field.
Deal specifically, I think Luke Dill is the second best tight end that we have for this year. For this year, I think. I just see him being the number two.
Okay, I mean, we're not going to agree on that one. Everyone loves Luke Deal. I love Luke Deal. But, I mean, you got a guy like Rico Walker that committed from Maryland. The dude is a friggin' tower. He can friggin' play ball. And Luke Deal, I'm not saying he can't. It's just Rico Walker, in my opinion, is all around better a player than Luke Deal. Maybe Luke Deal is a better blocker than Rico Walker, but I mean that pales in comparison to what Rico Walker can do on the field.
And that's fair. And I am perfectly okay with being wrong in this situation. I just don't think I am. Um, at the very least, it's not as big of a hot take as your Cam Coleman not being a starter game one. So there's that.
It's a possibility,
So
bruh.
let's move on to something we definitely do agree on. Go ahead
110%.
and run down the offensive linemen for us.
All right, so I'm starting from left tackle all the way to right tackle, so that's the order. Left
Yep,
tackle, I got Percy Lewis. He's just too
of
big,
course.
too good, and too talented to keep off the starting spot for left tackle. There's just you cannot keep him off the field. Left guard,
Self-explanatory. Yep.
yeah, I got Dylan Wade starting at left guard. The dude's a baller. He's a friggin' powerhouse. Connor Liu as our starting center. He did amazing last year as a true freshman, and that's just gonna carry on into
Couldn't have
2024.
really done better.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you couldn't have asked for better. And he came on the field in an emergency situation and just took the starting spot from Tate. So it's just that also, in my opinion, is along with Percy Lewis, is a no brainer. And then at left guard, I
Yeah.
have Xavier Miller
Right guard.
or Jade. Sorry, yeah, right guard. I have Xavier Miller or Jaden Muskrat. I don't think it's going to be that big of a battle for Xavier Miller to beat out Muskrat. I think Muskrat would
Now wait a
be more
second.
valuable as
Wait
a
a second.
backup.
We talked about this. We talked about this earlier. You had written it down wrong.
Yes.
Xavier Miller is your right tackle, not the right guard.
Yeah, I did write that down, but I said they needed to be switched. Wait, didn't
Right,
I?
right. You had it originally as Xavier Miller being the right guard,
You're right.
but in
You're right. You're
fact he
right.
is
I
the right
forgot to update
tackle.
my notes. I forgot to
So
update my notes. I have Jeremiah Wright starting at right guard.
yeah.
Jeremiah Wright
Oh
or
man,
Jaden
this is
Muskrat.
cracking me up.
So
Oh,
I'm working
I,
on 4 megabits a second, Cameron. It's there's okay. Moving on.
there's a
Anyways,
lot going on. We're good.
Jeremiah Wright at right guard or Jaden Muskrat, and it's not going to be hard for Wright to beat out Muskrat in my opinion. And then obviously a right tackle
Yeah,
got
it shouldn't
Xavier
be.
Miller.
There you go. Too tall. Um, so yeah, no, we agree on offensive line. Again, next week we're going to talk about our defensive starters. Hopefully, we'll have a better connection and it'll
Yeah,
be
definitely will.
smooth sailing. But I'm sure we're going to differ a lot more on the defensive side of things than we did on the offensive side of things. Um, but moving right along, let's talk about basketball. There's not really a lot to talk about. We came into the podcast hoping that we were going to talk about, a backup point guard committing, but that fell through. Duke Miles committed to Oklahoma, so there's not that. Then we were like, oh, yeah, but we got the power forward from Clem. No, he's committing to Georgia. So
They threw a
really
bag at that
no
boy.
transfer news. But I think this is as big of a development as getting someone to transfer in, and we are going to be able to have another player returning for a crazy. Um, I think it's his fifth year,
It would be. He's exercising his COVID year option.
and why is his name escaping my mind now all of a sudden? Oh
You and
my
me both.
gosh. Chris Moore. There we go. Wow. Sorry, listeners. Chris Moore is going to be coming back, and the SEC tournament, man, he just was a whole nother player, and hopefully we see a lot more of that next year. So I think this is a big get. Gives us a lot of depth on the offensive and well, primarily the defensive side of
Yeah,
things. So
defensive.
I'm super excited about that. So, did you have anything that you wanted to add to the basketball talk before we get into the petty part of the episode?
No, I don't. I mean, that one's just self-explanatory. We needed help at the power forward position since our roster is really thin, and with Chris Moore coming back, it solves a couple of things in that regard. So,
Yeah,
like you said, it's just as big as if we got another player in the portal.
yeah, no, I totally agree. Um, well, so last week, Josh was not able to join us. He was very disappointed that he didn't get to talk about these next two subjects. And so, Josh, I'm going to give the floor to you. Start us off with, the petty part of the episode. And last year, I got my 10-minute rant on these two subjects. And so I'm going to pretty much give you the floor here.
Well, I mean, to start it off, what Aiden Holloway said about Bruce Pearl and Auburn, it was a shot to the groin to his old program and his old coach. He says I kind of
Mm-hmm.
got sold a dream by my coach. The season started out good for me individually and as a team, and then he kind of went in a different direction with the offense. I mean, if you don't produce on the court, then you're not going to get the minutes that you were getting. I mean, against Baylor, the dude looked amazing. We all thought he was going to do amazing things, and for whatever reason,
Yep.
he just kind of fell the frick off. So for him to say this, he's a whole bitch. There was no reason for him to say this about Bruce Pearl. Bruce Pearl gave the world to him, and he just spat in Bruce Pearl's and Auburn's faces. And now he's going to go play behind Mark Sears at Alabama
Yep.
because Mark Sears is coming back. So, I mean, in that regard, you could also say he was sold a dream at Alabama because when he was being recruited, it wasn't no one was sure if Mark Sears was going to come back. And with him saying he's going to come back, now Aiden Holloway's kind of stuck there. So, I mean, he can take his friggin' selfish attitude and his whiny demeanor to Alabama. And like Bruce Pearl said in his Salvation Army speech today, he said, cost $500
Mm-hmm.
to get a ticket in Neville Arena. You can go online and get a ticket for Coleman Coliseum for $5. So, I mean, you get what you pay for, first off. And if you cannot learn to play as a team instead of individually, then you're going to continue to ride the pine, and I hope he does. Because we spoke about it whenever he entered the portal. Like I spoke on the episode, I wished
Yep.
nothing but the best
Yep.
and success for Aiden Holloway, and then he comes out
We
and
both
just
did.
spits in everyone's faces. Yeah, and so I mean, again, he's a whole bitch, and he can, he's gonna reap what he sows. That's just the fact.
Amen.
And he can kick
All
rocks.
right, and
I hope he fails.
go ahead and go ahead and lead us into the next subject. Stay on
Nick
that Alabama
friggin'
train, man.
Saban, bro. In the draft, I can't. Who was he talking about? Like it was a player. Was it a player at Houston or Iowa or something? Indiana.
No, it was the cornerback from Toledo, Quinion
Toledo.
Mitchell. I'm having to look at last week's notes.
Yeah, well, he said in the draft that at Alabama, when Nick Saban was still the head coach, he said that they tried multiple times to get him to enter the portal to come to Alabama. If that does not scream tampering, I don't know what tampering is. That's literally the
I
definition of tampering. And for Nick Saban to say that on national television, live television, in front of millions of viewers during the NFL draft, and then more than likely the NCAA and SEC not to do anything in regards to an investigation of Alabama and Nick Saban, then I don't know what would drive them to investigate any school. We all saw what Auburn went through when the rumors were that Cam Newton was paid $100,000 to come play at Auburn. We all saw what that put everyone through in the Auburn's organization. And for Nick Saban to actually admit to doing this, and more than likely nothing to
mm-hmm.
come about it, it would not make any sense. And I can only imagine there would be a lot of upset people and like money donators to the SEC and NCAA if nothing like that happens. It doesn't make sense to me for
Yeah.
nothing because, oh my God, I'm getting worked up right now. It deserves a full blown investigation on Alabama and Nick Saban.
Yeah.
Because if he's admitting
Yeah.
to trying to poach a player from friggin' Toledo, what did he do to these high school players? What did he promise these high school players in terms of monetization?
Uh-huh. Amen, brother. Amen.
It's
No,
just
that's
it's just a
it,
load of horse crap.
it, yep. You basically were taking my rant from last week verbatim, I swear. It's just absolutely asinine. And I won't do the joke again, I promise.
If Alabama's not
So,
investigated, then we know for a fact what everyone else has like thought and known in their hearts, but nothing was proven. Now, if nothing happens, now we all know that the game is rigged for Alabama and Nick Saban.
yep. I don't think there's anything else that needs to be said more about that. I think we're
Yeah.
both on the same page there. Well, with that bombshell, good night and War Eagle.
War Eagle.